I think I'm unmuted now, so I can
On the
actually say
screen
hi
here.
too.
Yeah,
Cool.
So,
perfect.
welcome everyone to our Deathfolks Live. We have Brother Moses here with us. Brother Moses does a lot of things, so we'll introduce him a little bit and then let him kind of expand on what he does because he knows better than we do what his magic and his alchemy is all about. But he studies the Old Testament. He kind of challenges religion in a way that I've never seen done in any other spaces. It's provocative, but also kind of resonant and comforting to me when I listen. Think that he's able to take core concepts and expand on them in really profound and creative ways that bend my mind. So I am excited for us to all kind of journey down some of those crooked paths together tonight. And he says in his bio that his goal is to arm himself and everybody who will take up the cause with ancestral knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to promote individual and social well being. He's the founder and keeper of the Holy Mountain Spiritual Temple, which is a post-modern religious organization built on ancient principles, including ancestral veneration, magical ritual, rites of passage, and communion within the spiritual reality, which is, of course, the larger, more overarching reality that we all live within a microcosm of. So, welcome and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this. There's such fertile cross pollination between our fields, and you came and spoke to the temple. So it's very good to be here speaking of death, folks. I don't really have much to add to that except the particular relevance perhaps here tonight, which is um, the further back we go in the story of religion, the more kind of specifically focused religion is on death and dying and the dead, and that three-part thing. So if we go back to like ancient Egypt, for example, kind of the whole purpose of the whole religion was preparing for death and thereafter, right? And even when we go like way pre then to like prehistoric, the first signs that we have of any religiosity is what's called the skull cult. People would dig up the skulls of their ancestors and paint them and put them in the wall in the house. And that kind of forever connection with death, well, death being like the primary thing that we can't explain. And of course, like way back in the beginning, I guess even birth is confusing and the sun and the moon and all that stuff is confusing. But we seem to have figured out most of that, but death remains as elusive a, field of knowledge. So I think it kind of remains ever present in a spiritual calling. I think it kind of gets filtered out in religion because, well, there's a whole lot of death that is a little personal, a lot personal, and also non-monetizable. So it's really not in the purview of organized religion so much. But in terms of spirituality, I mean, even the term spirit kind of recognizes the idea of spirits, which we very often conceive of as dead things or not yet living things, or maybe those are the same thing. And so this kind of question and these wonderings and these wanderings very much lead to ancestral cults, death cults, as they're called, not like the Heaven's Gate kind or the Jonestown kind, but the other kind, where essentially the goal is to get in touch with that realm, that place that we were before we were here and that we are going to after here. How can we vibe with that? Kind of becomes one of the first questions that people want to know, because there's this sense that like, yeah, these babies are coming from somewhere, and grandpa went somewhere. How do we get in touch with that? And so that's kind of what you called me for.
It's the timelessness of it and the recognition of beings not being limited to like a body, right? Like you can connect across time and space.
Well, and that's it. It's like outside of time and space, right? That time and space is the vehicle of the living. And totally, when we're alive, we're subject to it. We live in the seasons, we live in the years, we are part of time and space. And then at some point, we're not, and that we come from that to this.
So
Um,
let's dial this back and eventually get to like the really large overarching, concepts in esoteria and the afterlife. But dialing it back to like, okay, so somebody that you love has died. How do you contact that person? What are ways that you can try to connect with that person? And or separately, maybe it's not recent, maybe it's ancestral, maybe it's, like what is the essence of me? I have these gifts and these talents and these things that seem to come naturally to me. I recognize that these must be inherited. How do I, venerate, contact, request, thank, that energy and where that came from. So
That's a great place to
really
start.
mediumship, if you will, and ancestral veneration, and how those things connect and how we can, just as like normal people, practice them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, everybody's normal. Everybody's not normal. So there's that. But I guess I want to put out, because you had started with someone who just passed, and I really want to stress that for in virtually every tradition, for some period after the passing, whether it's 7 days in Judaism or 9 nights in Afro-Caribbean traditions, for some period immediately after the passing, you just want to let that person go. That is the focus of the whatever interaction. So to clear that, it's not like you come home from the funeral and you want to contact someone, but let's say you feel inclined to be more in touch with your ancestors. I think we can distinguish between, so normally in English, the word ancestors means anyone that came before you in sort of your family line, including living people, right? You have living ancestors in the way we use the term in English. So we're going to disambiguate just to kind of keep it separate. Those living ancestors, as we might call them, we're going to call elders.
Okay.
And then ancestors we're going to use to refer to those who are not living anymore. Could
And
use them
does it
both
have to
ways.
be a certain level of generation back? Can it be just deceased? Or I've heard some traditions say that you should go 3 generations back to call them an ancestor. Do you have any thoughts
So
around that?
the idea behind that is that so we're getting into like technical subtleties that are kind of footnotey, but
But
they're
it's
fun.
good because it makes
No,
it more inclusive, right?
totally, you're right.
Sometimes people are like, oh, wait.
It's
Yeah,
fun
that's
and fascinating nonetheless, right? So there's this idea, right, that when the spirit and soul leave the body, the spirit and soul being two separate constituents that come together with the body to make the person, that when the spirit and soul leave the body, at some point the soul drops off and the spirit continues to ascend, resume, atone, whatever you want to call that thing that happens at the end, resorb, to the kind of like great over spirit. And in that process, we kind of get this 2-stage rocket thing where it like goes up and then it loses the booster and the other part goes, right? So the first thing is, when we have sort of wait 9 nights or wait, 3 generations or whatever, the idea is not to kick the booster off too early, not to
okay.
pull down on the booster while that thing's going up and making it break too early.
That's a really good way to put that. Yeah, I like that.
And that said, there is similarly the idea that you can continue to propel the rocket, so to speak, by praying for the spirit of the departed. So, I'd say it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Don't do what you're not comfortable with. You're probably not going to break anything if you try it once. And in my experience, if you're doing something that's going to break something, you'll know. It's not like
Yeah.
the movies.
And really, like, even overarching that, I would say if you're doing something from a space of really genuine love and devotion, you can't break anything.
No, and I mean, you would have to try really, really hard. And it doesn't seem like anyone's trying really hard to break anything. So we'll be okay, right? So with those sort of caveats and in that framework, what does it look like to communicate with the ancestors? First of all, let's say, what does it look like to communicate with the dead? Straight up, really good question. People talk about seeing the dead. People talking about hearing the dead. What are they talking about? Are they actually seeing a person standing there? Are they actually hearing something? Some people, yes. I have some colleagues that there have been funny instances where they like thought a person was in the room and there was not a person in the room. So like that, yes, some people, but most people do not experience that kind of thing. Aaron brought up mediumship, which is a specific thing where that is allowing the spirit of the dead to mount, to kind of enter your body and speak through your mouth or right through your hand or move the planchette on the Ouija board through you. And, depending on the tradition you're talking about, that may be seen as potentially dangerous. Giving the footnote on that, because that's what makes us so rich. The reason it's potentially dangerous is if you don't have a lot of experience calling a spirit, someone else might be like, "Oh, that door's open. I'm going in there."
Right. It's the low hanging fruit, is what I've always said. It's the red light district.
So you kind of want to, that idea in general, I should say, is going to be pervasive. The idea that like opportunistic other spirits that aren't your ancestors will show up at first, right? There's like There's kind of just some
And
like,
Ouija board is bad.
well, again, it's not the Ouija board is bad, but the prayer that you say, or the, invocation, or whatever you do to kind of frame out what's going to come when you
Yeah,
call, and
filters.
how you put that call out and what filters you put out are really going to determine a lot. And even then, if you happen to catch the wrong one, they're going to go through all your little filters, and then you got all sorts of problems, right?
Cyber hacker ghosts, huh? The spirits that get through.
Really sneaky. I mean, and again, it is the low hanging fruit usually, right? Most spirits, and I guess we're gonna give a lot of so in that framework that we leave our body, our spirit, and our soul then go upwards, outwards, we might say, from the very material to the more
Well, it's
fine.
less, yeah, it's less dense. Like I've always, explained it most simply as humanity being a human, the human experience being a merging of spirit and matter,
Mhm.
right? So there are things that are much more on the material, like dense level, and there are things that are much more on the spiritual, esoteric level, and there's every kind of realm in between, and
And
they're
that's
all
what's happening to the
real.
body, right? It's
Mhm.
decomposing. The actual matter is decomposing and turning into energy, right? It's becoming energy in the bacteria. They're moving, they're radiating that energy upwards and outwards. That's actually what's happening, right?
Yeah, it's real.
So as you kind of separate energetically from the material, or as we, because at that point you're hardly you at that point. Um, there's this thing, and where the soul, at least the spirit, is just basically electricity, it's energy. But the soul, that's your mind, your emotions, your sense of humor, all that composite that we consider the personality. That's the soul. And a soul may be afraid to be released from the spirit. The spirit can't have fear, but souls certainly do.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like this is a really important distinction.
Yeah.
So when you differentiate the two, you just said, the soul has a personality, the soul can kind of reincarnate, the soul can continue in different formats, but the spirit, I don't know what words you just used, but it was essentially it's more like an echo, it's more like
It's like
residual
electricity. So this
electricity.
spirit in every language are the lights flickering there because of awesome spiritual stuff, or that's just happening because you.
It's because my house was built in 1907 and the outlet's really old, and I
Oh,
have
okay.
put on it to try to keep the light on. I wish
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
So the spirit is essentially is the breath of life, right? Spirit is what is in, spirit is the difference between alive and dead. Soul is the difference between you and me. Think
That's
about it like that.
I need you to quote that. That's
It's
Yeah, I was
important.
just gonna say, everybody
write that
write that down.
down. Yeah.
So like you have both of those because you are both alive and individuated. But when you die, both your individuation and your aliveness go out. Your individuation basically has the potential to either stick around this kind of area, which is a ghost or whatever, restless spirit, or it could be like, you know what, actually, I'm chill, I'm at peace with this, cool. And then the soul kind of disperses and the spirit kind of continues. You could think of it like water evaporating up to the clouds and then raining back down. That's
Yeah,
kind of a reincarnation cycle.
continuum of it. Hmm.
So that kind of distinction, and I'm looking over here because I know I just got a really good book. It's like a gigantic book that only talks about the difference between the spirit and the soul, but it's not easily within eyeshot. Otherwise, I'd hold it up for you guys. I'll find it on a break or something. In any case, so when we're contacting the ancestors, there's a couple things. One, if we are interacting with a personality in any sense, we're interacting with the soul. If we're just interacting with an energy, whether it manifests, because light's energy, sound's energy, right? So if it's just an energy that is not a personalized thing, then we're interacting with the spirit. A subtle point, but a point nonetheless. So you asked about how do we do these things. This gets around to, well, I guess why we're here tonight, which is the ancestor altar. That is kind of the venue that we establish for all these communications. There are countless traditions about how to do it. The best news is you have seen them probably all your life. You may already have one. I feel like it maybe not in this generation because things are more digital, but if you go back just a couple generations before most photos were digital, when we had actual physical photos, in just about every home, there was someplace, a mantle, a shelf, a particular wall, or something like that, that had pictures of ancestors, of family generally, and often in contemporary homes, the elders and the ancestors are sort of commingled. But by and large, that element, meaning that special place for the remembrance and acknowledgement of the ancestors, is a thing, is in the house. And so to specifically kind of turn that into an ancestor altar is not very much. It just means focusing it a little more by moving the living elders, maybe to another wall, another shelf, another part of the house. Adding a candle, which many people kind of already have there, and generally adding a glass of water. The candle and the glass of water, most people are going to ask about. Some say it's the elements. As I've understood it, death is a state that is very cold and very dry. And so if we want to get the cold and dry kind of adjusted a little more to where we're at, we need to add some water and some heat. That makes a good deal of sense. In a sentimental way.
As a conduit, I just think that water is the ultimate conduit.
Right. And water, yeah. I mean, spirit moves through water is the thing, right? And some people say, well, it's just hospitality. You want to give them light to find their way home, and then water to drink. Yeah, and it's weird because a lot of cultures have water and fire on there. Many of them have very different reasons for it, but nonetheless, it's like those seem. That's why I kind of feel confident being like, for whatever reason, get a glass of water, put a candle out there. Everyone kind of agrees you should have them. There may be some disagreement as to why, but that's kind of universal. Yeah. So water and fire, basically. The pictures of ancestors are great. Obviously, though, you have ancestors going back 300,000 years. Pictures only go back about 150. So it is not to say, and moreover, ancestral reverence goes back more than 100,000 years, and they certainly didn't have any pictures to put on their ancestors. Well, I mean, they would dig up Grandpa's skull, but nonetheless, the pictures aren't an essential point. They're a great focal point, and the use of a focal point in this situation is, on the one hand, for you, and on the other hand, for the ancestral spirit, right? So this is where pictures of them, their personal keepsakes, their favorite things, their favorite vices, especially the things that maybe they shouldn't have enjoyed in life, but now they're kind of free to get around to. Bringing those things together, from you from below and them from above, it serves as a focal point for you to draw together. That said, for me, the most critical things are not the material things. They're the things that connect you with them. So even something as simple as a notebook that has their names in it, dates of birth, dates of death, even a little biography. So I'm very grateful and fortunate to have inherited from family members written biographies of a great deal of my ancestry, right? So having that, having their names and reciting their names out loud, calling the names, is really powerful. Reading their biographies aloud in this specialized place, in this place you've sort of set aside for it. These are all really powerful ways. And then other sensory things you can do are playing music of their time and place. And that's phenomenal and fantastic. And cooking their food, not just getting it from a restaurant, but actually cooking it, the smell of cooking, that rarefied sort of energetic part of food. Of course, the physical part of food, spirits don't need nothing with, as they say. Some people say put it on their altar and then eat it yourself. Some people say put it on their altar and leave it under a tree, whatever feels right to you. But that said, cooking it and presenting that cooking food that's radiating the smell, and sort of smell being the part of food that exists in the energetic state, right? Smell is just chemesthesis, or it's chemical, energetic chemical sense. So that part of the food that's purely in the energetic state. The music, of course, is sound in that energetic state. And the more of these touch points, and the more of these focal points you can address in a non-material but an energetic state, I find the easier it is to bring them around. So I was getting into, what does bringing them around look like, mean? How do you know? I typically, maybe I'll see a little something out of the corner of my eye type thing, but I typically don't see anyone right in front of me. Very, very rarely will I hear like actual, very clear words, but very frequently will I hear tones, ringing in the ears, as we might call it. And I'm not a sort of person, like I don't generally hear ringing in the ears, but when I'm at my ancestor altar, I often hear ringing in the ears, just right when I finish the prayer type thing. The other thing that kind of goes with ringing, and many people report the ringing in the ears, the other thing that goes with that is the chills, right? Or goosebumps, and that whole experience. It can be hot or cold, but moving sensation, felt presence, especially localized on the surface of the arms, on the back of the neck. These are like,
Constantly. It's like my yes and no, honestly, in my own personal world. It really is. It's like I
sure.
call it the confirmation goosebumps, or like, yeah, spirit says yes, right? Like it's so clear and it comes out of nowhere. And I actually like want to challenge that and be like, is there any scientific or biological reason why this would be happening to me so much?
So there's like reasons for goosebumps, right? But why they happen, when they happen, and how they happen like that.
And it's 0 to 100,
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly,
and I'm
exactly.
alone when it happens. It's not like because I'm with somebody else.
And then the other thing that comes with all those things for me, because I'll get the goosebumps and the ringing in the ears, and then tears. Not
Tears, for sure.
crying,
Tears
but
too.
tears
Yeah.
like at a wedding, where
Yeah.
tears are just rushing out of your eyes.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that thing that spirit flows on water,
Water.
and all, um, the tears just start coming out of the corners of
Yep.
the eye, the ringing in the ears, the chills. I kind of have the chills now. Um, and when you get that going, like then it's on.
Okay, so when you have that feeling, what should you do next to say, okay, I hear you. How do we communicate?
There you go. You just did it, right? Use
Okay.
your voice. Your voice, as we said before, right? Those things that move the material into the energetic are really kind of how you meet in the middle. Your voice is your sense for doing that better than any of your other senses, right? It takes your thoughts and your physical expression and makes a sound out of
But
it.
you have to manifest it. I mean, is that accurate? Like, don't keep it inside, create a
Oh,
medium
say it
for
out
it.
loud. Say it
Yeah.
out loud. Yeah. Say it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so for me, what it looks like is every day, I have a temple, so you would just have an altar or whatever, but I go in there and there are candles lit, but I'll usually light them another little candle just for what's up. And I'll
So that,
begin with a prayer of acknowledgement, something along the lines of, first and foremost, I give thanks and acknowledgement to my ancestors. I acknowledge that you are my source and I am your current expression. I acknowledge that I am your hands in this
I like that
place.
too. Hold on, we got to slow down because you're saying some good stuff. I acknowledge that you are my source and I am your current expression. That's good.
And the idea that, you know, because so much when we talk about ancestral reverence is finding the roots of the self back through time and connecting consciously with them. And the next part, of course, people think ancestry is all about the past, but ancestry is about the future,
Well, yeah,
right?
because time
Because
goes in both directions.
and that's where they come back. That's where it matters. It matter what they did matters, and if the idea is that they're going to reincarnate, then what's coming ahead matters for them quite a lot too, right? So in giving the acknowledgement that they're my source, I might say you're my source, and I'm your channel. Um, I give you my hands and my words, and my service to fulfill our future generations, which are our mutual fulfillment. Um,
Yeah, so it's very much a relationship with spirit.
and an acknowledgement of a dynamic. Like we each have a role to play in this. You know what I mean? You're back there calling the shots. I'm here doing the work, and we're kind of serving it forward to the next generation. And you're going to get to come and eat off that. I kind of think of it like a kitchen, right? Like
The reciprocity, and it's
they're
like
the
a
chef, I'm the
thing.
waiter, and then they actually also come and eat at the restaurant too eventually. Um, and so there's that kind of acknowledgement part. I pray for their light and progress. I pray that they be atoned and returned in peace to the original first cause. It's kind of a term I like to use for God, but you could say God or the creative source, the creator, whatever. I pray that their journey unfold for them peacefully, that they be allowed to be released and relieved of all the bonds, burdens, and constraints that held them in the material world. That's a big one, that particular line, because that encompasses a lot. In
So
some ways, we could say those are the only reasons our soul and spirit stay in our body, is all these bonds, burdens, and constraints. And some of them are still there when we die. Again, this is where you see hauntings and felt presences of,
the
especially
residual trauma. I mean, the trauma has to be resolved. Healing and death are not synonymous. I used to think they were,
totally.
right?
It's
Because
yeah, it's not a resolution just because they
yeah,
died.
it's not. We tend to idolize people we love who have died, and that's okay to a degree that we're honoring them. It's a, it's a ritual. It's a temple, if you will. But it's not synonymous with healing. Like the spirit has to continue completely to heal. So with that in mind, do you think that those prayers that you're making for their
Mhm.
resolution are required for them to heal? Like how does a third party or an outsider's, veneration support that?
So I believe that it's like water evaporating. Okay, if you just leave it out, eventually it will evaporate. If you heat it up, if you add energy to it, you can make that happen a whole lot faster,
Yeah, I like
more
that.
evenly,
Which even lines up with like Christian scripture of when two or more are gathered in my name, right? It's
And
gathering together across generations is an extremely powerful braid.
that's, oh man, I have my PowerPoint that I guess we'll take a little break at some point. I'll pull up my PowerPoint. I totally forgot. I have all my graphics of the chain and the rope and how they're great metaphors, and they're pretty true, right? Because DNA becomes like the cord of generations, and we can actually think of our DNA as a braided rope of all our ancestors across, even before into pre-human times, right? Uh, Now, I saw a question come up in the chat, and I know you guys are fielding it, but I am called to answer it if I may.
Yeah, please.
So Aaron said, "Can you go back to who is considered an ancestor? Does it have to be family?" And this is something we were talking about yesterday, and I think it's a really key point. So, I can't speak for anyone else, but in my temple, we acknowledge there are many causes that lead to us as effects, that we sort of become these matrices of all these different causes overlapping. And by causes, what do I mean? Well, my parents definitely caused me to be, right? They're a major part of why I'm here, and I wouldn't be here without them. And their parents and their parents and their parents, all the way back, right? Like that. And that's what we normally think of as ancestors. But also, my teachers caused me to be. Everyone who's thought that I carry, in the same way that I carry my parents' DNA and I pass it on to my kids, there are thoughts and ideas that I carry and I pass them on to my intellectual children, as it were. And there are many thoughts that I encounter that whether they affect me unconsciously or not, I don't intentionally propagate them. But there are the other things that like I have learned, and I believe this is an important thing for me to teach. And that's kind of that same sort of line of ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are things that aren't facts or understandings or ideas, but like skills or roles it comes to. My dad was not particularly a protector. He wasn't not a protector, but that's not a role he stepped into. Nonetheless, it's a role I stand in very much. And there are people who have inspired me and tutored me in that role. And that's, again, causes this line of ancestry. And then we can go, if we want to get, really crazy about it, the other causes that lead to us, like my material body, I didn't really get this from my parents. I got this from the material world around me. The animals I ate and the things they ate, and whatever the stars that collided to put dust to make Earth, to all that, right? That's what gave me my material body. The
Yeah.
breath of life that I got from my creator. That's a separate. And this is how we start to get to the spirit, the
Right.
soul, and the body.
It's the ecology of both is connected. I feel like, it's the
It's totally, ecology is the word for it, right? It's this constitution, right? This constituted being. And so seeing that all of these chains of causes that come together here and now as an effect to make me, these are all in a way my sources, right? My causes. I could call them all my ancestors. That would probably get a little confusing. So like cast a net that broad. But if we're bringing it just back to humans, I think anyone who has contributed to, if you're wearing their face or you're saying their words or you're thinking their thoughts, they're an ancestor in some way,
yeah. Yeah.
you know?
So what about the ones that are like really present? I think we've all got two or three or four people in our lineage or in our family who like really are heavy in our hearts. My grandfather, he's,
Sure.
always, always with me. He's just very much inbred in me. How do we communicate with them in the most
I mean,
direct?
I feel like those are the ones that most people, like the average person, has a pretty good relationship with. That's where you'll meet someone and be like, "Oh, I saw a butterfly. I know that's my grandmother." Like that's super common, I think, without any formal training or anything like that. I think that the thing is this: when the ancestors know how to communicate with us, that's awesome. When we can pick it up, it's all about like, are you getting the signal,
So
right?
actually, let's go back to that because that's a really good, like when they know how to communicate with us. So when do they versus when do they not? What's that about?
Well, I mean, I think of it. So one thing I like to say all the time is we talk to spirits all the time. I'm a spirit in a body. Aaron's a spirit in a body. All you guys watching are spirits. You happen to be in bodies, but nonetheless, you're spirits and souls. And that's what's communicating. The bodies aren't communicating. Two corpses next to each other can't communicate. Two spirit soul composites can, right? So when we're communicating with a spirit or soul without a body, we do that all the time. When we're doing it with our bodies, it just is loud
Yeah.
because the body deals with the material part of the sound wave.
Yeah, I like the word
But
density. I mean, people talk about vibration a lot, and I like that idea too, but I think that like associations of good and bad sometimes get applied to vibration in a way that's
sure,
not
because it's higher or lower. Yeah,
yeah, and I don't like that connotation as much, but
totally.
like this is a dense, like slower wavelength reality, and in that way it's lower because it's slower and it's
Yeah,
dense,
it's just
right? And
heavier
the
and
quote unquote higher, reality is it's higher, just like a sound wave, lowers and higher. So
that's why when you hear the ringing in your ears, you never
yeah,
hear a low pitch ringing. It's always
yep,
a high pitched ringing
totally. I
because
mean,
it's
since this is Death Folks, we can talk about this, but even like, DMT or ayahuasca, I don't know if I've never done ayahuasca, but DMT, you hear that like
the
that
crinkling.
that crazy sound. It's a frequency that you're hearing that
Yeah.
you can't hear at a lower frequency. And I think, and I would love your feedback on this, but I've always felt like there was a disconnect, and like one of the things that challenged our ability to connect with people on the other side, is that distance between the vibrations, that distance between the frequencies. And so it's really hard to like hear each other, just like a CV radio, we're just like miles apart in channel.
Mhm.
And so how do you come closer together in channel,
So
especially
that is the
particularly
ancestor
but
altar.
particularly when you're in grief because you're not doing your
Ooh,
best usually.
yeah. Okay, so to answer the first part of the question, I'll answer the first part and then I'll kind of pivot to do the
Right.
grief part because that's exactly the point of the ancestor altar. The point of the ancestor altar is like let's establish a protocol, a time and place where we're going to meet. I'm going to be there. They're living in a thing outside of space time. So to agree to meet us at a time and place is a fairly tricky thing. Just if we don't have some good coordination, the
Yeah.
ancestor altar kind of gives us that axis mundi, that liminal space, that
Yeah.
zone of interaction,
Okay.
um, and so we can kind of channel it there, and
It's a
that's
meeting
why
ground.
and they'll know like okay, show up here now, and we'll just blast on all the different frequencies until we can get something, and they'll know, you'll hear it, they'll feel it at some point. You're flowing. um, when we're grieving, so this is where it's tricky when we're grieving, right? Because if the sensibility of the soul is strong, as we pass, the soul detaches from the body, but it's still quite dense, right? It takes this process of about a week, 10 days, as it kind of like gets less dense, and even then, they say it's actually about a year before it's
Yep. It
really
takes
processed through.
residual for quite a while. Sensitives kind of know that. Yeah.
So during that period, the more the dense, what we're going to keep using that parlance, the soul is, the more the unfortunate likelihood that it will, through volition, because the soul has volition, spirit does not, through volition,
I don't know
say,
what volition means.
there's just will, intention,
Okay.
like I want. The spirit can't want, the soul wants.
Okay.
So the soul could say, I want to stick around and be with my family. Fuck this. I don't know if I could say fuck this
I
in
think
Death
that's
Folks,
actually
but
pretty common. Yeah.
very common.
Yeah,
It happened.
definitely.
Yeah.
And that in our culture especially, right? Because um, very often we go to death kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I describe it as like, imagine just getting dropped off at college. Like,
Oh, I have some
I got no
experience
idea.
with that. I just dropped my daughter off at college 2 days ago.
So, and I hope before she went, there was an orientation and like some now imagine if there wasn't even an application process, you were just like, all right, Bella, time to go. You just
Wait,
kind
where am
of
I? Yeah.
get out, throw her out, her bag
Yeah.
out and be like, get out, go, you'll figure it out. You're standing there in shock. And all the more so if mom's right over there having a cup of coffee, it's like dropping kids off to camp, right? They go right back to mom unless mom leaves. If
Oh,
mom
that's
leaves, then they'll
yeah.
go to the counselors.
Even the same thing at daycare when they're little, Yeah.
So that's where it is.
So maybe
From my perspective, that's the point of mourning. The point of mourning is the dead to see that the living have accepted their departure so that they're like, oh, I guess it's good to go. I'm going to go. That's why it's so important to mourn in many cultures. That's because otherwise the dead might be like, oh, they're not ready to let me go yet. I'm not, if I don't got to go, I'm not going. It kind of takes them seeing their loved ones having that cycle and that closure. I'm getting all goosebumpy. For them to be like, okay, I'm good to go. This is, I feel good about this. I'm confident they're okay. The people I care about are okay. Cool, I can go. The other thing that can happen is traumatic death, right? Because in traumatic death, you miss that basic idea that you even got dropped off at school. You were asleep.
You missed the bus and now,
well,
now you're in the upside down world.
Traumatic death is imagine if you didn't travel there. Imagine if you were sitting at your house one moment and then you were just at college. Like that would be really jarring if you didn't get in a car or pack a bag or anything. You were doing one thing and then boop, you're somewhere else. That would totally confuse you. And if you could find your way home, you would probably just stay there and not leave. And that's indeed where we see things like that around traumatic death. So it is kind of this dual point of being like, with traumatic death where they don't know they've died. Step one is being like, you're dead. You need to acknowledge that. We need to get you to acknowledge that. And then step two is we need to get you to the point where you're cool with being dead. You're cool with being dead. You're cool with the fact that you're living. You're cool. You're cool with the fact that you have something to do and you're ready to go. And then we get to the point of making that journey. And that's a process of basically releasing more and more, right? Those bonds, burdens, and constraints I said, they are the responsibilities, they're the traumas, they're the wounds, they're everything that individuates the person in terms of fear and anguish. And once we have taken those on and handled them responsibly and have shown them that we're good stewards of these important things, then we can turn back to them and say, now about all your blessings, about all your talents, about all your gifts, all those good things that you're hanging on to, you got to let them go if you want to keep going. So don't worry, I've proven I'm trustworthy.
That the ego does not die with the body. Is that fair to say?
The ego does not die immediately with the body, no, because the ego's in the soul. Yeah, and the soul dissolves over time in the sense that, do you know your great grandparents' names? Nah, that's like 500 years ago.
Right? I mean, like, most of us only know 3 or 4 generations back.
Exactly. And I would set, by the way, if everyone, there's overachievers in here for your ancestor altar, if you can accomplish 7 generations on your ancestor altar, it will probably take up a whole side of a room. And that would be a magnificent thing. That would be quite sufficient. And if you can't get pictures of them, even just knowing the names of 7 generations, that's a lot of people, right? It's like it's 2 to the 7th, but it's an ambitious project that takes many years. I have been going about 5 years, and I can go back about 5 generations. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I can go back about 5-ish generations. Before that, records are very scarce. The genealogy gets scarce. And that leads to that point where people are like, well, what if I'm adopted? What if my family has no records? What if I don't have, I joined ancestry.com and they don't have my ancestors? That goes back to that idea that like, it's in your blood, like every single, you're wearing their face, their hands are on your wrist. Like, and I don't mean it metaphorically, like the shape of your hands was not something you figured out. That's something you got, and you got that from them.
I
The
have the
sound
exact
of your
same hands
voice.
as my mom.
You have the exact same hands as your mom, yeah. The sound of your voice, the look of your eyes, like you didn't make you weren't. It wasn't like a video game where you picked like, "Ooh, I like this one. Yeah, I like those lips." No, they're theirs. They're on your face. So you can't be far from your ancestors. That's an impossibility. You're
Do you think that they are always rooting for us and trying to help us? And how do we do that?
so if I think I think in general they want the best for us. But as we'll know, that the whole like you can do it snowflake, that's a pretty new thing. If you go back 4 or 5 generations, a lot of times parents motivated their children to do the best with a lot of negative reinforcement. So I think the ancestors can provide negative reinforcement for us.
Challenge. I mean, I think that suffering is by design in many cases.
So, in many kind of very traditional systems, whatever misfortune you have in your life is because your ancestors are not appeased. That's
Because
the
they're not
basic idea. They are not appeased. They are not happy with what you're doing, and they need your attention. So they're going to make your car break. They're going to bring every type of misfortune that you might experience. They're going to do that, and so the first thing is always when you experience misfortune to get with your ancestors, get to the altar, and be like, help me know what I need to do. One of the things that we talk about, how the ways they communicate with us, and we're saying how your face isn't yours, your hands aren't yours. Usually your ideas aren't yours. Sometimes they are. If you sit
I
through
love that.
and reason through something,
I
which we
love
can all do, right? We can all sit and reason through and say like, well, I should do this. And if I do this, then I do this. And then we can do that. And those ideas are yours. But sometimes we're just sitting there and what we call inspiration, the coming in of a spirit, happens.
I've never broken that word down and realized that before.
Yeah, same word. That's what it means. Inspiration, the taking in of a spirit,
Amazing.
right?
Can I
So
share can I share a story that reminds me of?
yes. I'm going to camera off for a second, but please
Okay.
make yourself center stage here.
Okay, let me see if I can do that for a minute.
You're a speaker, so you should be good.
All right. Yeah, speaking of like your ideas not being your own, I'm 38 years old and I've been doing death work for a while and I've been a cat lady for a while and an advocate and a doula in different capacities for several, many years, more than a decade. And didn't know really of any ancestry or lineage that kind of, developed those things or like would have started those energies or practiced those things before me. And then when my dad moved a couple of years ago, he gave me this newspaper clipping from, I don't know what year, like a really long time ago, from when my great grandmother, who is now long gone, was in her early 30s. And it was talking about, all of her advocacy in the community and how she was doing environmental, advocacy, which was like way unheard of back then. And cats, like her love for cats and how she was rescuing all the feral cats in the neighborhood and she would take all of them in to be spayed and fixed and like essentially running her own rescue out of her garage in the mountains, saving all of these cats. And it was so resonant for me because I don't know that she necessarily had like a death application the same way that I did, and maybe she did, maybe that just wasn't part of the news article, maybe she wasn't ready to talk about that with them. But the like environmental advocacy and just the advocacy of like integrity, and I very much identify as an advocate and a cat lady, and I thought that those were just my own ways. And then here's this published article about my grandmother that could have been written about me. So
and remember that she's just one ancestor or one ancestral line, right? So when we go through that, like, okay, maybe there's another ancestor who's the death tie-in, or et cetera, because you're the composite, right? You're the composite.
Well, I know who the death tie-in is too. So yes.
So yeah, exactly, right? So you're become like the composite of all these different traits of sort of this lineage, and you become that complete expression, of them here and now, fulfilling all those roles simultaneously.
think I've never even really thought about it in this way, but do you think that our children are intentional designed composites of those things, of our ancestors, wishes or their energy patterns?
Yes. Um, I think that it I'm not great at math, so it's kind of a cop out when I say that. I think it's very geometric because I'm not good at geometry, so I could be very wrong. I don't know what I mean by that. But I just think of it like echoes. Or now I guess I'll pull up my screen share. Can I screen share? Do I have access to do that,
Let
Lauren?
me make sure. I think you do, but we can do that.
Okay. Because I can just pull up my.
Actually, Lauren, can you make him a co-host? I don't think I can.
I did. He's
Cool.
co-host.
Thanks, Lauren.
And before we forget, I just have to say really quick that when you talked about that they need us to grieve, so that that material heaviness can start to dissipate, that they know that that's okay. I never thought about that way. I always thought about we need to grieve for that physical release, that if we don't, we'll here on earth have these ramifications. And I never thought about it in the sense that they need us to grieve just as much as we need to grieve. And I think that's really important for humans to know, but death workers to know too, especially.
So
Very
I
important.
got that notion from, I was really curious. Oh, one thing I didn't mention in my bio is like my undergrad was in cultural anthropology. And that's why I got into a lot of this weird stuff, right? So I was fascinated by, like, in Latin America where they hire paid mourners. You're paying a stranger to come cry over the grave.
Yeah.
What is that accomplishing? It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense until you realize it's for the dead.
The wailers, the singers.
And
Yep.
that convinces the dead, like, oh shit, I'm really dead. Okay, this is for real,
They still do that in certain countries.
very
I
much.
think
No,
Norway does.
they still do it in Mexico, like it's
Yeah.
not uncommon. There's also this idea in general that the dead are kind of like, because of that separation from the material, they don't have the precision in the material, right? If they know their family's there and there's crying there, the presumption is their family's crying. It's also like, if you get into like necromancy and stuff where you're hiring the dead to do work for you, you can pay them with a stack of coins and they don't really know that it's not a stack of gold coins. You can give them a stack of pennies. That kind of fine fix on the details of the material, it doesn't really matter to them. So things become more tokenized in general, right? Symbolistic, symbolistic and stuff like that. So I'm going to try my screen share here. I know how to use Zoom. There we go. Share screen. Here we go. Share. You guys see that now?
Yes.
Cool. Blah, 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 blah. I could have just done this, but it would have been very boring. This would have been like your usual. Not that your usual classes are boring, but it wouldn't have been the Deathfolx. Just some things to think about, right? 7 generations is 126 people. If you were to pick 126 random people anywhere, think of how many different skills and specialties that would represent the resources, the wisdom, the experience, the solutions. Excuse me, the fact that in 126 people, some of them will be exceptional, like truly exceptional, notable people, right? Like,
Lauren, would you like to share who your truly exceptional, notable ancestor is?
I don't know who. I think we all have some, don't we?
Well, the one who was a president of the United States.
Yeah, I always say my maiden last name is Harrison, but William Henry Harrison is like a 3rd great uncle, not too far back, 4th great uncle.
That hate can go on your altar. Like that's
Yeah.
and what you would think about is, would you invite them to Thanksgiving or a wedding if you had infinite resources? And the answer is yes. And you throw them on,
Well, that's the funny part about him, is he's the shortest president to hold office because he gave the longest inauguration speech in history as well. And it happened to be cold and rainy because it was in January, and he quickly caught pneumonia and he died. So he's the longest speech, shortest president.
And he died young while in office, and now his descendant Lauren is a death worker
who talks a lot about death. Yeah,
he's definitely the president of the dead. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we need to get him named as the president of the dead. Can we do that?
We can at least make T-shirts. I don't know that we can get any official U.S. declaration, but absolutely we can make T-shirts. So, you have some great heroic ancestors. There are a lot of traumas and patterns that you have to work with to heal. Um, I guess we don't have, I mean, I'm happy to go late, but one thing I want to get into is ancestral healing, because that's healing yourself, but it's the paradigm that we enter it through. Every one of us is carrying epigenetically, like this is very scientifically proven. I think I even have like studies in here. This is
Yes,
technical stuff, quarter of generation stuff. Um,
DNA.
we'll leave it here and then I'll jump through that other stuff. Let me make this point. So, we all have our epigenetics, which is how our DNA expresses. Those switches are all set by life experiences, right? When we were at least when I was in school, they said, so there was this idea of evolution, and there were these two guys, Darwin and then this fucking idiot Lamarck. And Darwin was super right, and Lamarck was so dumb. He thought that the giraffe's neck grew because the trees were tall and he stretched, and that got passed on. How dumb! And it turns out that that's epigenetics, and it's actually not that dumb, and that's 50% of it at least. So, haha, fifth grade science teacher in your face. In any case, that idea that our experiences then change the expression of our genes leads to some really powerful things, because it leads to life habits. It leads to physiological stresses, actually, so stress is encoded in our physiology. We hold stress in various parts of our muscles and things like that. Those things are passed down epigenetically. That's crazy. When you look at how like parents and children often have the same behaviors, even if they're separated by large degrees, or their voices, or their not even just the sound of the voice, but the tone of voice and the way they emote is often very similar. Often when they're separated, and it can be intergenerational, that's very often epigenetically carried. So all these different things can be epigenetically transmitted, and the epigenetics are malleable, right? It's not like your genome that's fixed. So you're born with all these settings, basically, that were settings created by your ancestors. Your ancestors, by and large, lived in a much more traumatic situation than you do. And I mean, you have your ancestors, my ancestors 2 generations ago were surviving the Nazis, but my ancestors 200,000 generations ago were surviving the cave bears. Like there's a lot of stress in the environment that has gotten programmed into us of various sorts. And this is where every manner of sort of imbalanced, personal, unbreakable habit type thing seems to find its roots. And it's very difficult when we look at it. It's hard, it's impossible to punch yourself in the face. So it's very hard to just grab it head on and fix it in ourselves. When we work through our ancestors, when we heal that in our ancestors, the result is some amount of healing in ourselves. So that was a long aside, but I think worthwhile and important. I'll share some technicals here. Like we said, this is the Congo cosmogram. It is used in a variety of West African and Central West African cultures to represent the cycle of life. It is very similar to what would have been propagated in ancient Egypt. It would look a lot like a symbol that you've probably seen if you've studied Native American teachings or a wide variety of other teachings, because it is the cycle of the sun. And everybody, everywhere, at every time has observed this cycle, that the sun rises. Oh, I got to use my pointer. See, I know how to use it. We got this. And where's my cool pointer? Here we go. So the sun rises, and then it reaches the midday, and then it sets, and then it's on the other side of the world, right? They could time this so that the ancestors completely knew the cycle of the sun. And then it goes to the other side of the world, midnight, and then it dawns again. And that cycle over and over becomes conceived as the cycle of the soul. In this diagram, it's pretty well and disambiguated, a lot of detail, where we have the idea of birth and reincarnation. That starting point, entering the body is the rising sun. Noon is life. Midday essentially becomes, basically hitting midday in my life, right? Midlife, your maximum potency, your maximum presence in the world. You are at your most incarnate. You can kind of think of people as these things, and most living things as these things that become more and more dense and sort of like big and here, and then less and less dense and big and here. And kind of moving then to this setting sun death, at which point we enter now this sort of first arrow of death, if we really want to get technical, is what they would call the underworld, right? You have this idea in like Greek mythology and all this stuff that you have a first part of death that's actually kind of scary and sketch and like perilous. And then after going through a number of trials and things, you reach a point of resolution, up, and then you kind of get to this really awesome, the Elysian fields, paradise, what have you, part of death, this sort of area here. So that idea is in this. So we're looking at it in 2 dimensions. If we were to turn that, and I wish I had included this, into 3 dimensions, meaning taking sort of that flat slice and turning it like this, we'd see that it's not a circle, it's a screw, right? There's dimensionality. It moves in a 3rd dimension. And so, as with a screw, it kind of goes around the other side and comes back and goes around and comes back. And that becomes how that reincarnation happens in an ancestral line. Now, it's not just a simple 3-dimensional screw, meaning it goes this way and that way, and you can go around it. There's you might say a 3-dimensional screw for each of your ancestors. So it's a very complex geometric thing. It's basically a fractal. Again, this is a cop-out for me because I didn't do well in geometry, but this diagram that we're looking at here is a very simple cross-section of the pattern, right? So we can keep going. Let me get out of my annotation mode here.
And since it's 8 o'clock, I just want everyone to know that we will continue recording this. So if you do have to go, we'll have this recorded and up. And if you want a copy of the recording as well, you can always just email us at thedeathwives@gmail.com.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
and if it's okay as well, since we're gonna, we're not done, but send us some questions right now. If you've got any, shoot them down there at the bottom. And when we're done, we'll open it up. And really, if you've got a question, we can even just turn your mic on and let you ask it. But if you chat it, we'll know that you want to.
So look at how a rope's made, right? Like this part that you see here that's on the surface here is not on the surface over here. It kind of goes into the rope. I think it probably comes out, I don't know, here or maybe, down here or something. I don't know. But so if you consider this like a timeline, you're not going to see this rope come back up here till like over here. And that's kind of how reincarnation works, right? Like you're going to the other side and then you're back on this side and kind of being braided together like that. At least that's how I think. Can I clear all? Yeah, there we go. So, and we see that, like I said, kind of visibly in your DNA. So you get this kind of cord of generations is the idea. There's the past, the future. There you are in the present. And all you are is the present part of the cord of generations. You can think of passing a long rope between your 2 hands. The part that is you is the part that's in the hands. But if you're passing a rope through, that part is changing. It's like a wave, right? The wave nearest to the beach is different water every time. But it constantly appears in the form of the wave nearest the beach. So the part that's between the hands is always you. Your consciousness is kind of the boundaries of the hands. And you're constantly going through this, and it's fed from your ancestors and goes to your descendants. So ancestral trauma becomes a knot or a kink in the cord. And so for that stored ancestral trauma to get untied, if you think of a long rope with like a knot back there, or like an extension cord, if you've ever had to like be a roadie and like work through a knot in a mic cord, it takes forever. You can't just like undo it down there. You got to move it all. You got to run the whole thing through till it's in your hands, and then you can untie it, and then you undo the whole thing, and then you can reel it back through. And that's how this work, the resolution of ancestral trauma kind of works, where we bring that stuff. I mean, I've shared most of this stuff, but let me just run through. Yeah. We've done all this stuff. So kind of when you bring it back through to your hands, that's really starts with making that connection with the ancestors and then entering a state to receive that inspiration from them on where those traumas are. And it comes very, it's almost like a therapist that is trying to go very fast, right? Not letting you come to the conclusion, but it's like, all right, no,
really you're hiding this from yourself. And you're like, whoa, hey, like that's a little much. You can't just drop that on me.
I
But
wish my therapist would have done that.
they don't do
It
that. I think it's
took 2 years to get to the point. No, but I
no,
get what
exactly.
you're
I
saying.
think because they don't want to break you, but your ancestors know exactly how hard they can push you, right? Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to talk over here and I'm muted.
I saw you like lip syncing.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it is with our best of friends too. Like I really don't want friends who are going to kiss my ass or tell me what they think I want to hear. I want friends who know me well enough to know when I'm not doing my best and to be willing to say it in like a gentle but honest way, like Lauren will, you know. That's like the trust of friends and the trust of business partners and hopefully the trust of, you know, marriages is it's like being able to be that way with people. And so certainly our ancestors would it's kind of a show of love really and of like I know you can
Call us out and love us at the same
yeah
time.
Well, and again, they're calling themselves out. They're them letting you know their needs. Like, damn, I'm still really hurting about the fact that I didn't have food. Right? That's still like, do you have enough food? Do you and your kids have enough food? Are you good on food? Where's that coming from, Grandpa? Oh yeah, you were in a concentration camp. Food was kind of a thing for you guys.
yeah
You know, and so then we start to get to, I guess I have weird things around food. I never really thought about that. Like I always clear my plate. Why do I always clear my plate? Well, because you can't waste it. Why can't you waste it? But what if you don't get more? Really? Why would I not have more food tomorrow? I know there's more food in the fridge, but on some level, I found that belief, right? And then I was able to be like, oh, that's an ancestor's belief that they kind of just tucked away.
Yep.
One of the things
inherited
they just, they didn't even realize they just didn't empty out when they died. Right. There's this idea, and Aaron, like we've spoken about this a little bit, that when someone approaches death in a structured capacity, and when we look at a culture that like trains you to die, there is the very intentional release of all those things so it doesn't get passed down.
Yep.
We don't have any of that shit, so we end
really
up inheriting
that's
it
at the heart
all.
of a death doula's work is like how can I help this person to reconcile as much as they can before they die so that it's not passed down and inherited, and that's the opportunity of life. That's the opportunity of life.
That is
It's
the point of life, right? Like, and that's why when we look
Unpacking
at
before you leave.
yeah, exactly. It's how many things can I cross off my list? How cool, how ready can I get for the trip?
yeah
Right.
where we do
So-
it, enlightenment happens here is what they say.
Some people wait. Me, if I have to take like a flight, like an actual in-person material flight, I'm packing about 2 hours before that thing and like looking at all my details and like I'm not even going to print the ticket or anything like that. But I've have the clear and all that other stuff, so I go pretty quick in the airport. I can afford that. But I think in terms of death, it's a very different thing, right? Like I have my itinerary. I know where I'm going when I land. I kind of have the idea of what I already packed, my things that I'm going to do on the flight, and I'm very much pack some snacks, even very much planning for that trip. And that's what we find a significant portion of. Like, listen, those ancient Egyptian temples were not easy to build, and all those hieroglyphics were not simple to paint on the wall. And they did all that stuff because they found this to be an extremely important thing to devote all that energy to. And it's all about, being able to move along. And all of that is releasing of those bonds, burdens, and constraints, right? If we look at the Tibetan Book of the Dead, especially, which that one I think is even more than the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
It's heavy.
It's
dense.
Like it's very much the play-by-play of the process, right? And all of those gates that you're going through and all those burnings that you're going through and things are clearing all that stuff out. And again, you don't have to do it. You can leave it for your descendants, excuse me. I hope you trained them right when you were alive, because they're probably.
But you know what is a really parallel concept of that, and is just like kind of immediately before it in the procession of things, is whether or not someone has planned for their death in practical ways. If they already know you know, what their wishes are in terms of like hospice care, or if they want, you know, a do not resuscitate, or if they want to be on life support or not, those types of decisions. And then also what they want to have happen to their body, cremation, burial, etc. And then, you know, having their estate, if they have one, delineated and planned out for other people. Like it's the same equivalent, because if those things are already done, then their descendants, their children and or grandchildren have like a direct recipe to follow. They know exactly how to honor their wishes. They don't have to argue amongst themselves about what they would have wanted. It's just, it's clear.
Well,
And it's
those are all those things
translated
that
the same
that
way spiritually.
those are all the things that intercede or prevent mourning, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
therefore they're the things that, like, you're like, well, shit, they haven't even figured out what they're going to do with me. I can't go yet. You know, it ultimately disservices and robs a lot of that initial momentum of the dead, right? So for our own sakes, as the dead to be, and for anyone's sake as the dead to be, the more of that stuff that you just don't have to worry about when, you know, it's time for your flight, the better. For the living too, right? Because then that becomes the ancestral trauma the living carry.
That's what I was just going to say. You want to do it for your ancestors too, so they don't have to deal with your shit that you left behind.
And you know,
More
you can,
ways than one.
it's
Your
exactly, it's
children.
the exact same thing as the you know, material belongings, right? Like
Mhm.
ideally you don't have everything you've ever owned for your kids to sort through with no guidance whatsoever. As you guys know, that's
God,
kind
you
of
hope so.
that's kind of the worst case scenario of an estate. And then they just have an estate sale and get rid of it all, and none of it is resolved, and you're so sitting there but fresh out of your body being like, whoa, 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 I didn't give you that to sell you that. No, that is important. That has a whole story. You don't remember that story? I told you that story. And then you can't go, you know? So
Yeah.
the better to handle all that stuff, material, the intellectual, all those. And we, you know, I kind of talked about those different lines of ancestry. Our parents and our grandparents are usually more than, like, I have my dad's face, but also I have a lot of his words and his ideas too. You know what I mean? Like those are all, in all those ways we need to resolve in the material, in the sort of, in the soul and in the spirit. All those sort of different dimensions are things that we should prepare for, and the more prepared we are, the easier that trip is. And conversely, the less prepared our dead have been, the more we have on us. And I believe that in this time, here and now, we're really living in a period where there's been the least attention to that for some generations. Frankly, I think the gravity of that fact is very much why our generation is like, okay, maybe we need to look at this whole death taboo thing a little differently. You know, the past few generations have been, and really it's just been a few generations. When was the war? 1850, 2020, 170 years, 8 generations. You know what I mean? So it's like, go back 10 generations, whole different relationship to death. The end result of this last 7-8 generations kind of living in death taboo, that's this, you know, it is a lot of trauma for us to carry individually, a lot of trauma for us to carry as a society, and a calling back to kind of reckon with death, I think, to keep it from spreading further. That's my TED talk, my dead talk. That's what
My dead talk. That was awesome. I really, really appreciate your perspective on all of this stuff, both from like the most practical to the most esoteric application. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us tonight. No more questions, which surprises me. You guys are being shy. So last call to Aaron. Hi, girl.
Hey, Aaron.
Let me
Hi.
make you the spotlight. Hi, Aaron. This is
Ah,
Aaron Bear.
Oh, she says.
hi.
A dear one to us. What's up?
Well, this might be silly, but like back to just the altar
Mhm.
and setting up the altar. Like, can I my dead husband stuff share with my ancestors in the same
Yeah, because
place, or do you have a thought about that?
yeah. He's
Share.
your dead. You know, he lives in you, right? Anyone, your dead teacher stuff can be in the same place. You know, you can definitely. And some people will do like
this side of the family, and I kind of just, I think unconsciously set it up where one side's my mom's side and one side's my dad's side, and the middle is kind of my people. I think I just kind of unconsciously did that. But there's nothing wrong with sharing the space.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't
mine
know
is
if I'm like
so
making it more difficult than
mine's
it
right,
needs to be or
mine's right
something. I
behind
don't know.
me. Erin, mine's
Yeah,
right.
mine's right over here.
And this is all of my, actually I lied. Oh, you know what? Actually I lied because I made this one a dead and a living. So on the left side is my dead, and then on the right side is the things that live because of the things that died. So
Oh, I
current
like that.
cyclical altar. But a lot of times I have, just all of my dead. So it doesn't have to be blood relatives.
Yeah, it definitely does not
Okay.
have to be blood relatives. Another thing that I know I didn't go really into, but personal keepsakes, and then like things from their places, like dirt from the childhood home, from the family home, that kind of stuff is really powerful as well.
Okay, I don't have a problem getting my husband to come around or him coming sometimes on his own, but I'm feeling like I'm getting more from like my grandparents and my great grandparents, and so I'm trying to figure out what I'm like. I put out my grandma's like favorite caramel candies, and
Where's your grandma
because
from?
she's from Ontario, Canada, but I've had this dream a couple times, and she's like super distressed and not relaxed, and she like did not die. Like she took forever to die, and I just have
Where
this feeling that she's like stuck in
where are
Ontario,
her
Canada.
people from? Wait, so she was born and died in Ontario. Where are her parents
England.
from? Okay, cool. So English food sucks. It doesn't smell particularly good when you cook it, but maybe tea. Whatever would be comforting to her. Whatever would
Yeah.
be, if you've worked, one way, if you've ever worked with people who have like Alzheimer's, or kind of they're going, how like music and smells of food kind of bring them back in that really weird way. It's like smelling salts almost, but it has to be
Yeah.
familiar. So
Well, I almost think she came around like after we made chocolate chip cookies, and that was like her jam,
so then there you go,
that.
right?
Do
Mix
they
that
miss
with her
food?
with her music.
Do you think they ever miss the sensations, like the sense of
Definitely.
like food, especially and like
Well,
sex?
actually, I would say it depends how dense their soul is,
Okay.
right?
Uh,
The ones that are like very dense souls. So souls get more dense from doing dirt, right? Yeah. This is all totally footnote, afterward type stuff, right? But necromancy, the practice of necromancy is employing the dead to do things, and usually you got to find something that's material enough that it hasn't gone. So you go to like a murderer's grave or something like that. Like they've done something that they have a burden that they have to work off before they can ascend.
So
So they're
something
gonna,
karmic is what you're saying.
yeah, and they're kind of stuck around here, or even just like um, someone whose concerns in general at the time of death would be more material and they're less enlightened, you might say. I hate to put it that way. It's not a judgment thing, but or just someone who doesn't want to go for whatever reason. And you make that relationship with them. And so there's a few things that come with that. It has effects on the living for sure. It has effects on the living's relationships with other spirits. But that the weight of the density, we'll say, kind of cascades, right? Like kind of contaminates, you might say. And that this whole process is going through like letting go of the density. So the ones who really miss and like lust food, like I'm really like feed me, I want it, they're gonna be very dense,
Okay.
right? The ones that are gonna be further up are gonna be less about food, but still smells, right? So that's where like their cologne and their perfume and their cigarettes and stuff like that, that's just the smells that are them, the less dense things that are connected with them. And then onward, right? Then just their words and, just their life at some point. I think that kind of becomes the process. So do they miss food? Some of them definitely, I think. That's
Do
my
you
answer.
think they miss their loved ones here?
I think it depends on how they're mourned. I think if they feel like, look, all I know is that like I'm pretty cool with things, but as soon as my kid is like, Dad, my dad hasn't paid attention to me all day, I feel really fucking guilty and I cannot do anything else until I go be with my kid.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I have to go to a meeting or take a call or a road trip. If she springs that on me, I'm not going. And I think it's like that, right? Like I think that if our living are like, oh, you're lost to me, woe is me.
Yeah.
then there's the natural inclination to be like, no, 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 don't worry, I'm here.
Yeah. My
And like,
personal experience lines up real closely with a lot of the things you kind of said about this tonight. Like when my grief was more fresh and raw and young, if you will, that I had hooks in my loved one who died. They were more present here with me because I was not letting them go, right? Like if the idea of grief is that you're accepting the death, perhaps like denial, bargaining, depression, like those kinds of like, feelings that come with grief, that those are like hooks. And so the presence was very thick and still dense and still present in the first couple of years. And then I had a series of like releasing ceremonies, a series of releasing ceremonies as I was able to genuinely offer release to him. And he did dissipate, if you will, or like become less of a solid type of energy and more of a dispersed type of energy, more of a everywhere universe type of energy. And I think now has entered into multiple other lifetimes, but I can still summon him back, right? Like the soul is so fluid. I can still request presence and receive it. Like even literally just right now, like every single time I talk about him, he is immediately in presence with me. And so I feel like the soul can move faster than light can move, to be with the people who are in their tribe and who they're forever tied to, because they recognize in the same way that we recognize that this is a temporary distance and it's a temporary separation.
well, it's like, if you go in the music room and you hit a tuning fork, everything that's tuned to that will vibrate.
Yeah.
There's no real separation because there's a basic homogeneity of tone, right? And I know we don't want to do the higher lower tone and all that labeled judgmental stuff, but just that when it's a matter of resonance, which it very much is with our loved ones, there is no separation, right? Like it's instantaneous, and there's that principle of synchrony takes over.
It's how we love the people that we love instantly, usually, right? Like the people that are going to be your close people, like you kind of recognize them right away.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love what you said too at the very beginning, and now you kind of touched on it again about the voice and how, we hear this ringing, but like using our actual voice instead of just thinking of them, also saying out loud hello and acknowledging them and venerating them with your actual voice.
Oh, it's so important. It's so important to, because you embody the thought just to speak it, right? You're physically moving it through your body. But yes, like projecting energetically with your voice. And, we live in a culture where we're communicating a lot with this thing, no voice. We're communicating a lot with no voice typing. We're holding a lot in. It's not, total aside, but a couple weeks ago, I went on a pilgrimage walk, and the feeling of walking on the side of a highway, like praying at the top of your voice, like way louder than this, was so awesome and liberating. Just like I've done that before, like prayed at the top of my voice, but in like the middle of the woods where no one would hear me. Though it was funny because I was carrying children's sandals as an offering, and I was walking down the road yelling, "Oh my God, oh my Lord!" And the dude definitely pulled over and was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm just doing it. No, it's but, yes." But no, I mean, it's like such an amazing, powerful feeling to embody something in your voice. And we often keep it very constrained. And around death and dying, especially, because we're concerned about triggering people, and we don't want to open that can of worms, and we just want this. And, but it's really, really important. I think there's, when you were just speaking, Aaron, it was reminding me that there's this like give and take between us and our dead, right? Again, our dead is the portion of us that goes on the other side. We're the portion of them that's here, and there's this, as we hold them here, we're thinking a little bit more about us, but then we can kind of reach a point where like, okay, I'm okay again. Like I have homeostasis again on my own. I can lean on you a little less, hang on to you a little less, and kind of let go of you and let you do your thing. And I think, that's grieving, right? I think mourning is for the dead and grieving is for the living.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Another distinction.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would kind of like, that's how I would disambiguate.
Mourning is more of a ritual or a practice or a devotion. And then grieving is how we
That physical release.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And mourning is usually prescribed, like there are prescribed ways to mourn, like you're supposed to mourn, this is how our culture mourns. Grieving is very individual.
I wish there were more prescriptions on how our culture should mourn. I mean, I think that in Western culture, we can look to traditional Jewish mourning rituals as kind of the most pronounced and like, the
I
most
see.
apparent.
I think
It's
of
not.
Irish wakes, even though I'm Jewish. For me, for me and my family, it is always Jewish. But like for everyone else, I've always gone to. It's been a wake in some way or
Have you
another.
seen a lot of wakes in
Party.
the US?
Me, yeah. Well, I grew
Oh,
up in New Jersey, where I grew up. It was an Irish. It was I don't know. I feel like a lot of people who weren't Irish or Catholic had wakes. Wakes
Yeah.
were just what people did.
well, we're pro wake for sure, but it's
I've
norm.
even done shots of whiskey at funerals in the traditional funeral home that I worked at, Aaron. So there's definitely people who like cling to that idea, maybe even if it's just because it's like sounds cool, like let's party around the
Let's
casket.
party, yeah.
But I love it because they really are bringing this like life and energy to the room. And I think one of the things that we fail at as a society, and you were kind of talking about this, was that we don't talk about it and we're very like tiptoey. But do you think that I personally and Aaron have shared that it's, when you're talking about somebody who's died, you say, oh, how'd you meet? What were they like? Instead of, I'm so sorry for your loss, move on.
Yeah.
That it's so important to
Let
talk
them
about
talk
them.
about them. Yeah.
And that's for this person here on this realm who's missing them, and to be able to talk about them, that's part of their grief. But do you also think that it's part of that separation as well, of like, oh, I love hearing these stories about myself, oh good, I'm glad they're talking about me?
I think
that
anything
kind of
that
thing.
would give you peace of mind, yeah.
Mhm.
Like if I died, right, and you guys went up to my wife and were like, oh my God, what'd you think of him? And she was like, I really don't know. I absolutely would not be able to go anywhere. I would be like, wait, she doesn't know yet. Like, we need to get this sort. And because the reason I know that is because if I'm alive and that thing were to happen, I again would not be able to leave the room. I'd be like, whoa, this conversation isn't going anywhere. We need to hold up. You've known me all these years and you don't know how you feel about me yet. Like, it would be one of those things. And so likewise, whether I'm a spirit in a body or I'm a spirit out of a body, that's what I'm going to do. And I think that's the case for all of us. Like, the closure, we use the word closure, right? And so what are we closing?
I hate that word, actually.
Really? What do you prefer?
Aaron hates that word too.
Do you like
I prefer,
resolution?
no, relationship. I still have a relationship with my loved ones in spirit. It just looks very different than it used to.
So I think of closure, because I'm a geek like this, like a circuit, right? An open circuit is problematic. That energy is not returning to itself. When you close the loop, when you close that circuit, when you connect the two ends of it, then everything can flow. And to me, that's what closure is. Closure is like connecting these two loose ends that are trying to connect to each other. And when you provide that connection, then everything's going to kind of flow through. And again,
I would use the word alignment instead.
Sure. You could integration.
Integration is a good one. Yeah.
It's interesting because you said connection. These all we're talking about the same
closure
thing.
just insinuates an end, and I don't think that there has to be an end. I mean, I know.
I think to the contrary, it's the continuation.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's an interruption, and closure resolves the interruption.
Well, it's like all of a sudden we're speaking different languages. Imagine that you've loved someone with all of your heart and you know them on a soul level, and then all of a sudden they show up, only they don't have a body and they don't speak the same language as you. How do you figure that out?
Yeah. There's amount of it is alignment. It is fundamentally like, how do you get on the same wavelength? It's tuning in, right? It's like you said, like a radio, like the old radio with the knob where you're like we're swinging past the signal and you got to kind of like fine tune. And I think again, we're at a significant cultural disadvantage, right? Like, we don't have a lot of the models as dying. We don't have a lot of the models for mourning, and we don't have a lot of the models for grieving. And thankfully, there's Deathfolx to kind of help with all those things, I think.
We're trying.
I was going to say, it's more than us. We have to have an army, just like anything else, of just kind of going back to those generations and saying, hey, sorry, we haven't been grieving you very well, and everybody that's come since you, we're trying to change that for our future generations, because I think we know finally it's taken maybe 2 or 3 generations to have that discord of like, God, why is it so shitty? Like, why do I still feel so bad? Oh, maybe because we forgot to grieve and we don't know how to grieve these people. And in not grieving them, we're not honoring them, we're not letting them go. It's this whole connection.
And I think
Yeah.
Feel it as
When
an
you have an
uncomfortable
aversion to
thing.
grief, you can't integrate grief.
well, and I was going to say, when you have an aversion to death, you can't integrate death, right? Like
Right.
we carry around this like death is bad, death is bad, death is bad. Okay, they're dead. Oh, that's really bad for them. That fucking sucks for them. It's really hard to genuinely connect with them and be like, cool, we're at peace with this. And at the same time, be like, oh fuck, you're dead. That really sucks. It's very hard to sit with those two.
Yeah, there's a
things.
dissonance there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
All right. We are about half hour over, Erin.
Yeah.
We could probably
wrap
talk
it
to you
up.
for
Forever.
hours and
Yes.
hours and
Basically, my
hours.
favorite conversation.
I want to leave you guys with the thing if I can find
Yes.
it. If I can't find it, I won't do it. But I don't know that this is the right thing for the mourner, right? Or for the griever, but it is a thing to take, as death workers, if I can get it. It's from Chuangzi, which is my favorite Taoist book. It's kind of the best Taoist book in my opinion. He's a very funny. Oh shit! Oh no, I've Chuangzi here. He's a lot more fun than Lao Tzu, who's he's cool, but Lao Tzu is pretty serious. Chuangzi
I
is,
like Lao Tzu a lot, but he is very serious.
he's just like Chuangzi is as serious as Lao Tzu, but also doesn't take himself seriously. Yeah. So there's this like the great fool type thing, archetype playing out through him. So there's a lot of interesting stuff about death. The one I was just looking at was, here we go. How can I know that wanting to live is not a delusion? How can I know that aversion to death is not like a homeless waif who does not know where to return? When a beautiful princess was taken captive by another nation, at first she cried so hard she dampened her sleeves. Then she started living with the king, sharing his bed and eating fine foods. After that, she regretted having wept. How do I know the dead do not regret having longed for life at first? Those who dream they are drinking wine cry mournfully in the morning. Those who dream they are crying mournfully go out sporting in the morning. When they are dreaming, they don't know that they are dreaming. As they are dreaming, they even try to divine the meaning of dreams. Only after waking up do they know they were dreaming. That's kind of the principle that the book brings forward, and I encourage everyone to get into their idea of death because it
We're doing it
removes
right
the
now,
stigma.
right? I mean,
Yeah, no, we're doing it.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you all.
I know we so appreciate your time and sharing with us. And like like I just said, I think we could probably be on this call with you for, I don't know, a half day easy. Somebody brings us food, we keep talking, we're good.
I proposed it before. I'm going to put it out there again. I think we should collab on a podcast and just have like a 3-4 hour call
Good.
once a month.
It would
Yes.
perfectly. We've got
And I will get the delivery food
That's
so that we
sounds
can make it
good.
work.
Before we go, Moses, how can everybody on the call tonight follow you and get more connected to your work?
Totally. Best way to connect is on Instagram. That's where like I'm generally is where I live online. So it's at holymountain.co, and you can also go to as a website www.holymountain.co.
And for the Colorado locals, do they have real life opportunities?
Yes, within COVID constraints is what we're saying, right? Like if you're a local, still please connect on those channels. The temple is in my backyard. You are very welcome to come, but it is a relatively small space, and I do have little kids that go to daycare and stuff. So depending on your COVID things, I want to honor and respect that and make sure everyone feels safe in how they connect. But yes, if you don't want to come here, let's connect in person, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, cool guys. Thank you so much for having me. It is
Thank you.
really an honor to be able to share with this program. You guys know I support the work you do like profoundly, and to all the death folks. It's really cool to meet you guys. I hope I get to know you all more. If you're working with these lovely folks, like, you are in the best of hands, and I trust you are also doing amazing, righteous, important things for the world. So it's an honor to speak to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everybody.